Question 15. Whom do you admire most? In what way does that person inspire you? Well, the British, and I am British, are not an idolatrous lot. I well remember when a woman previously known as Lady Diana Spencer, who later became the Princess of Wales, but then not entirely sure who she was when she died. Somehow she was still able to call herself a princess even though she wasn't a princess because she divorced and was no longer a member of the royal family. I don't quite understand, but we all know who I'm talking about, yeah? She died in a car crash in Paris, and there was this bizarre outpouring of public grief in Britain that certainly surprised the British, and I think the rest of the world as well. And I can speak at least for middle class Britain. I can't speak for all British, but amongst the middle classes, we were pretty embarrassed by that. We thought this was very un-British behaviour and couldn't understand why people were making really quite such an enormous fuss over the death of one woman. I can remember the day of her funeral, there was a war game show in Newcastle, and of course I went to it because it's a war game show. And I walked through the centre of Newcastle, and almost every single shop, including all the really big shops, on a Saturday had little notices in their closed doors saying, out of respect for the former Princess of Wales, this shop will be closed on Saturday, whenever it was. And so amazing, I walked through a ghost town, a ghost city, in order to get to a war games show, and there were quite a few people at the War Games show, perhaps not quite as many as there would on a day when Princess of Wales, or the former Princess of Wales, wasn't being buried, but it still happened. Clearly War Gamers weren't too put off, but yes, there was that outpouring of grief which smacked of idolatry to people with my culture. And I suppose I have been brought up to believe that idolising people is not a good thing. Never meet your heroes, they have feet of clay. And I would go further in that this ties in with the fact that I do not support any political party, never have and never expect to. Because if I were to, for instance, support, I don't know, the Conservative Party, I would have to somehow support every single policy put forward by the Conservative Party at that time, despite knowing full well that they'll be changing their policy in a couple of months' time on this, that and the other. Which is ridiculous. What are the chances that I really truly agree with every single thing that the political party is doing and will agree for the rest of my life on fundamental principle? It's zero. It's not going to happen. Well, similarly, what are the chances that everything about a person is great, is worth admiring and idolising and using as a model? I don't actually buy the whole idea of role models. I don't think that they're a good idea. I don't even think that they really exist, but maybe that's a topic for another video. If you say, well, Horatio Nelson was a wonderful guy because he stuffed the French, yes, he did. Hurrah, build the guy a column, but you don't have to like everything about him. That scandalous affair he had with Lady Hamilton, maybe that wasn't such a good thing. The way he treated Sir Sidney Smith, for instance, maybe that wasn't, all that nice, really, quite unreasonable, given that Sir Sidney Smith, who was another up-and-coming young, he was an up-and-coming young naval officer when Nelson was the established guy at the top of the tree, and Nelson disliked Sir Sidney Smith because Sir Sidney Smith was doing all the sort of stuff that Nelson used to do in his early career, which won battles and so forth, but was quite, insubordinate. Well, perhaps he wasn't perfect. He didn't see his own flaws. So I don't admire whole people. I admire people for a thing they do or a skill they have. Mike Oldfield is a spectacularly good guitar player. He's an amazing musician. Tubular Bells is a masterpiece. Hurgest Ridge, I think I actually prefer. Loads of people say it's rubbish. Even Mike Oldfield, rather unfairly, says it's a bit disappointing. But okay, apart from that loud bit, maybe in part 2, I think it's absolutely gloriously beautiful, and I love it, I love it, I love it. But even Mike Oldfield, as a musician, has come up with some duds. He made an album called Guitars. It's rubbish. And I've read his autobiography, and when he starts giving his opinions on why he thinks he's turned out the way he is and so forth, I find myself thinking, yeah, stick to music, Mike. Just tell me about how he made the records, because you're better at that. So I can admire Mike Oldfield's music. I can admire an album by Mike Oldfield, but and then dislike something else that he's done, and publicly, as I am now, say that an album like Guitars is rubbish, whereas other things like the album 5 Miles Out, absolute masterpiece. So that is how I prefer to carry on. I will admire a thing that a person has done, an idea that a person came up with, but the idea of idolising a person I see as completely unhelpful and un-British. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was brilliant, and so was Sir Isaac Newton, but both of them in their later lives got into all sorts of weird stuff, spiritualism and so forth. They got religiously a bit weird, and were pursuing all sorts of weird crank theories, and both went a bit bonkers, frankly. So I can admire his Sherlock Holmes stories, and I can admire his Principia Mathematica, Newton's, calculus, all that sort of stuff, gravity, apples falling out of trees. That was brilliant. Oh, yeah, well, you know what I mean. So, yes, idolising a person is not something I intend to do. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's British, and it doesn't fall within my moral code, if you like. But wait a minute, I haven't answered the question. Whom do you admire most? Well, I haven't named anyone. Well, or except I have. I've named Mike Oldfield and Isaac Newton. There are people in Britain called national treasures. We have these people called national treasures. There aren't very many of them. And they tend to be quite old, so they tend to die a lot. Thora Heard's gone, Victoria Wood's gone. But we've got Helen Mirren, Judi Dench, Joanna Lumley, who else? Stephen Fry and Alan Bennett. These people get called national treasures. I think Brian Blessed, I've heard described as one. But they all tend to be actors and so forth. They're not people who really do much to improve our lives greatly. Yes, Judi Dench can be really good in Shakespeare in Love, and she was. She played the Queen really well in that film. Won an award, But if she hadn't played that part, the chances are that some other actually very able actress would have played the part, and perhaps we'd all be saying how great she was. Whereas if Sir Isaac Newton hadn't stood on the shoulders of those giants and come up with all that calculus stuff, then we wouldn't perhaps be where we are today, when Isambard Kingdom Brunel improved the design of propellers and steam engines and so forth, and made transatlantic liners a possibility. Suddenly he was opening up new worlds to civilization. He affected hugely the lives of millions of people who came after him. But I still don't have to admire him as a person all round, surely. Why would I have to do that?